For 30 years, my life revolved around duty, purpose, and a deep sense of calling. My name is Michael Reynolds, and for as long as I can remember, I believe my role as a firefighter was not just a profession, but a mission handed to me by God. Growing up in the small town of Silverwood, nestled near the sprawling forests of northern Oregon, I had a deep appreciation for the land and the people who depended on its safety. Every day, I felt the pull to serve, to protect. From the moment I stepped into my first fire station, the air thick with a mingling sense of smoke, oil, and sweat, I knew I was home. The camaraderie among the crew, the adrenaline coursing through us as alarms blared, and the profound satisfaction of pulling someone from the brink of destruction. It was more than just work. It was a testament to God's presence in the chaos, a reminder that even in the flames, there was hope. Life, however, wasn't just about firefighting. Off-duty, I was a husband to Eleanor, the woman who had captured my heart with her unwavering faith and gentle strength, and a father to two incredible boys, Caleb and Isaac. They were my sanctuary, the grounding force that reminded me of what I was fighting for. Nights at home were filled with laughter, Bible stories, and quiet prayers whispered before bed. Even after retiring, I couldn't pull myself away from the fire. It was in my blood. I took on a role as a consultant, training the next generation of firefighters to face the infernos I had spent decades battling. I often spoke at community events, church gatherings, and schools, emphasizing the importance of preparedness and faith in the face of life's trials. My days were structured, purposeful, and fulfilling. That morning, January 15th, 2025, began no differently. The winter air was crisp as I prepared for another fire safety training session, this time hosted at a local church. I loaded my gear into my old truck, the faded red paint chipped from years of wear, and set out on the familiar route through town. The roads were quiet, and the rhythmic hum of the engine seemed to echo the steady rhythm of my heart. But as I approached the halfway point, something felt off. A tightness spread across my chest, subtle at first, like the ache after a long day's work. I dismissed it, attributing it to age or perhaps the stress of an unusually busy week. Yet, as minutes passed, the sensation grew more pronounced. My breaths became shallow, each inhale a struggle, as if the weight of the world had settled on my chest. I pulled over to the side of the road, hoping a moment of rest would quell the unease. The world outside my windshield blurred, the barren trees lining the road, the distant church steeple reaching toward the heavens, even the soft glow of the morning sun. All became hazy. And then nothing. The silence that followed wasn't the absence of sound, but something deeper, a void that seemed to swallow the very essence of life. Time itself seemed to halt. The last thing I remember before everything faded was gripping the steering wheel, the leather worn smooth beneath my fingers, and whispering a silent prayer. Lord, be with me. Join our growing community and be part of these incredible stories. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and share with others. Together, we can spread messages of faith and hope to the world. The void was unlike anything I had ever encountered, a silence so profound it seemed to resonate with its own kind of sound. There was no pain, no fear, no sense of urgency. Instead, it was as though the weight of the world had been lifted, leaving behind a stillness that stretched infinitely in all directions. I wasn't entirely aware of myself, yet I wasn't absent. It was as if I had been reduced to pure awareness, hovering in an undefined space between what I had always understood as life and the mysterious unknown that lay beyond. Gradually, the darkness began to shift. It wasn't sudden, nor was it intrusive. It was a gentle unveiling, as if someone were drawing back a curtain to reveal a light that had always been there, patiently waiting to be seen. This light was unlike anything earthly, neither blinding nor harsh, but soft, warm, and alive. It pulsed with a rhythm, a presence that seemed to echo the heartbeat of creation itself. As I moved closer, or perhaps it moved closer to me, I became aware of something extraordinary. This light wasn't merely illuminating, it was knowing. It reached into the very core of who I was, shining through every memory, every regret, every joy, and every fear I had ever carried. For the first time in my life, I felt completely seen, not in a way that was judgmental or accusatory, but with a love so profound it left me breathless. I realized I wasn't alone. Though the light filled the space, there was an undeniable presence within it, a being whose essence seemed to embody the light itself. I didn't need words to understand who it was. Every fiber of my being recognized him instantly. It was Jesus Christ. There was no dramatic declaration, no booming voice to announce his presence. Instead, he simply was standing or existing in a way that defied all comprehension. His presence was overwhelming, yet I wasn't afraid. His gaze, though I cannot describe it in earthly terms, held the weight of eternity and the intimacy of a lifelong friend. At that moment, I felt the entirety of my life laid bare before him. Every triumph and every failure, every act of kindness and every hidden sin. It was all there, exposed in the light of his love. But what struck me most was not the revelation of my flaws, but the complete absence of condemnation. Instead, there was an unyielding, indescribable love that wrapped around me like a warm embrace. Michael, his voice resonated, not through sound but directly into my being. It carried a depth and authority that made earthly words feel shallow by comparison. There is much I must show you. You were brought here not by chance, but by purpose. The landscape around us began to shift. It was as though the boundaries of reality itself were being stretched and reshaped to accommodate something far greater than the world I had known. Below us, I could see my own body, slumped over in the driver's seat of my truck, a lifeless shell surrounded by paramedics frantically working to revive me. Yet, I felt no fear or urgency to return. Instead, I was consumed by the peace and presence that surrounded me. As I looked at the scene below, Jesus gestured, not with a physical hand, but with an intention so clear it felt as though the entire universe was responding to his will. "There is more to see," he said, and in an instant, the scene faded, replaced by something I could never have imagined. I was no longer hovering above my body. Instead, I was being drawn upward, through what I can only describe as layers of existence. Each layer was distinct, yet seamlessly connected to the next, as if peeling back the pages of a book to reveal deeper and deeper truths. The journey wasn't one of distance, but of revelation. With each passing moment, I felt myself being unburdened, stripped of the fears, doubts, and distractions that had once clouded my perception. It was as though I was being prepared for something far greater than I could comprehend, and the anticipation was both humbling and exhilarating. And then we stopped, or perhaps we arrived. It's impossible to describe in earthly terms. Before us stretched a vast expanse of light, a realm that seemed to pulse with life and energy. It was not a place in the conventional sense, but a state of being, a presence so all-encompassing it defied description. Jesus turned to me, not physically, but in a way that made me feel as though I were the sole focus of his attention. "What you are about to witness," he said, "is not for you alone. It is a message for my people, a truth that must be shared. Watch closely, for the time is short, and there is much to understand." His words, though gentle, carried an urgency that pierced through the peace I had been feeling. This was not a moment of rest, but a moment of purpose, a call to witness and to act. As the light around us began to shift once more, I felt the weight of his words settle into my soul. The journey was far from over. Something extraordinary was about to be revealed, and I knew, deep within, that my life would never be the same again. The light began to transform, growing brighter and more intricate, as if layers of existence were unfurling before my eyes. It was not a physical light, but something alive, carrying with it a profound sense of awareness. Each pulse of illumination seemed to communicate truths beyond words, speaking directly to my soul. Suddenly, I found myself surrounded by a vast expanse, an endless horizon that seemed to stretch far beyond what my earthly senses could comprehend. The air, or whatever this space contained, was saturated with a presence so intense, so profoundly holy, that I could hardly bear its weight. Yet, in that overwhelming purity, there was no fear, only love, radiant and unyielding. I became aware of movement around me, though it wasn't the physical kind. Reality seemed to flow past, as if I were traversing dimensions layered upon one another. Time, as I understood it, had no bearing here. Each moment carried the weight of eternity, yet it was fleeting, slipping away like grains of sand through an unseen hourglass. In this space, Jesus stood beside me, though standing does little justice to the depth of his presence. He encompassed all things, his very essence filling the expanse, yet he was personal, intimately aware of me and my journey. His love was not passive, it was active, vibrant, a force that drew me in and sustained me. Michael, his voice resonated within me, not as sound but as pure meaning, infused with layers of emotion and intent. There is more to reality than what you have seen. The veil that separates the physical from the spiritual is thinner than most believe. You must understand what lies beyond, for it holds the answers to the questions your heart has long carried. As he spoke, the space around us shifted once more. Below us, I began to see glimpses of the world I had known, but not as I had ever perceived it. The earth was no longer a singular, solid entity. It was interwoven with threads of light and shadow, a complex tapestry of spiritual forces at work. In some places, the light shone brilliantly, radiating outward in waves that seemed to push back the encroaching darkness. These were the places where faith had taken root, where people had chosen to walk in love and truth despite the chaos surrounding them. But in other areas, the shadows were thick and oppressive, feeding off fear, hatred, and apathy. I saw communities consumed by despair, their spiritual light dimmed by the weight of disconnection and sin. The darkness wasn't a passive force. It was alive, moving, twisting, and seeking to devour the light wherever it found an opening. The sight was heartbreaking, yet I couldn't look away. These forces, Jesus explained, are not new. They have existed since the fall, their power rooted in the choices my children make. Every act of love strengthens the light. Every act of selfishness strengthens the darkness. The battle is not fought with swords or weapons, but with hearts and spirits. He gestured toward a specific scene below, a cityscape bathed in flickering shadows. Fires raged in the physical realm, consuming homes, forests, and lives. But as I looked closer, I saw the spiritual reality behind it. The flames were not just fueled by dry timber or wind, but by something far more insidious. Within the infernos, I saw dark entities, shadowy figures that writhed and moved as if feeding on the destruction. They were not demons in the traditional sense, but manifestations of spiritual corruption, their forms shifting and flickering like smoke. These beings thrived in the chaos, drawing power from the despair and fear that the fires left in their wake. What you see here, Jesus said, his tone filled with sorrow, is the result of hearts turned away from me. These fires are not mere accidents or natural occurrences. They are the fruit of spiritual apathy, of lives lived apart from my truth. I watched in stunned silence as the shadows grew bolder, spreading their influence through whispered lies and subtle manipulations. They sowed seeds of division and doubt, convincing people to prioritize comfort over conviction, distraction over devotion. The more these lies took hold, the stronger the darkness became. But then, amidst the chaos, I saw something extraordinary. Pockets of light began to emerge, small, flickering beacons that stood resilient against the encroaching shadows. These were the places where faith remained unshaken, where communities had chosen to turn back to God in prayer and worship. Look closely, Jesus instructed, and I saw how these points of light pushed back the darkness. Their radiance didn't come from human effort alone, but from a divine source, a connection to Him that transcended the limitations of the physical world. The shadows recoiled in the presence of this light, their strength diminished wherever faith took root. The scene was a vivid reminder of the spiritual battle raging around us, a battle most were unaware of, but were nonetheless deeply involved in. It was a sobering revelation, one that left me with a profound sense of both urgency and hope. Jesus turned to me once more, his gaze piercing yet filled with compassion. "This is why you were brought here," he said. "You must understand the reality of what is happening and share it with others. The time is short and the need is great. Many are lost, but they can still be found." As his words sank into my soul, the landscape began to shift again, preparing to reveal even deeper truths. What I had seen was only the beginning. The landscape around us transformed again, this time into something so profound it nearly overwhelmed me. I was no longer observing the interplay of light and shadow across the physical and spiritual realms. Instead, I was being shown the source of the battle itself, the truths that underpinned everything I had seen so far. Jesus extended his hand, not physically, but in a gesture that resonated deeply within my being. Instantly, the space around us became a swirling mosaic of light, colors, and forms that seemed to hold the very fabric of creation. Each fragment pulsed with meaning, stories, and truths embedded within every particle. "What you see now," he began, "is the reality behind the world you know. Humanity exists not only in the physical, but in a profound spiritual connection to everything around them. Every choice, every thought, every action echoes in the spiritual realm, shaping what unfolds in the world below." As he spoke, the fragments began to coalesce into specific visions. I saw generations of people, their lives intertwined like the threads of a vast tapestry. Some threads glowed brightly, woven into patterns of faith, love, and selflessness, while others were frayed, darkened by greed, apathy, and fear. "This is the story of humanity," Jesus explained, his voice carrying both sorrow and hope. "Each thread represents a life, a soul. When people align themselves with truth, their light strengthens the tapestry, pushing back the darkness. But when they turn away, the fabric weakens, leaving room for the shadows to grow." The vision shifted to focus on a particular section of the tapestry, one that burned with intensity. It was clear this represented the fires I had seen earlier, their flames consuming both the physical and spiritual realms. Yet within the inferno, small, glowing threads remained unscathed. These were the lives of those who had held fast to their faith, who had chosen love and truth over fear and despair. "Look closer," Jesus said, and the threads began to expand, revealing the lives they represented. I saw families gathering in prayer, their voices rising together as a shield against the encroaching darkness. I saw communities reaching out to one another, offering kindness and support in the midst of chaos. And I saw individuals, their hearts ablaze with conviction, standing firm against the tide of despair. "These are my people," he said, a note of deep love in his voice. "Their faith is not perfect, but it is genuine. They have chosen to trust me, even when the world tells them to doubt. And because of that choice, they are beacons of light in a world desperate for hope." Tears filled my eyes as I watched these scenes unfold. The contrast between light and darkness was stark, but so was the power of the light to overcome. No matter how deep the shadows, they could not extinguish the glow of a single faithful soul. "But not all have chosen this path," Jesus continued, and the vision shifted once more. I saw lives consumed by distractions, endless pursuits of wealth, comfort, and power that left little room for anything else. I saw hearts hardened by pain and anger, their light dimmed by the weight of unresolved bitterness. "These are the ones who are lost," he said, his tone heavy with sorrow. "They do not see the danger they are in, nor do they understand the power they hold to change the world around them. They have been blinded by the enemy's lies, convinced that their choices do not matter. But they do. Every choice matters." The vision began to fade, leaving me standing once more in the presence of Jesus. His gaze held mine, filled with an urgency that cut through the peace of the moment. "You must tell them," he said. "You must show them what you have seen, so they may understand the power of their choices and the love that awaits them if they return to me." As his words settled deep within me, I felt the weight of the mission he was entrusting to me. The revelations I had been shown were not mine to keep. They were meant to be shared, a call to awaken hearts and rekindle faith. Let us know where you're watching this from and your name in the comments below. We'd love to give you a shout out in our next video. Don't forget to like this video to help grow our community and share this message of faith with others. Together, we can spread light in a world that needs it. The light surrounding us shifted once again, and with it came a sense of purpose that filled the space. What had been a revelation now became a call to action, a mission that extended far beyond anything I had ever imagined. Jesus stood before me, his presence both commanding and tender, and spoke words that resonated deep within my soul. "You have been shown these things for a reason, Michael. This is not the end of your journey, but the beginning. What you have witnessed must be shared, for time is short, and many are in need of truth." As he spoke, the space around us transformed into a vivid tableau of humanity. I saw faces, countless faces, each one carrying a story, a struggle, a longing for something greater. Their expressions ranged from joy to despair, from hope to confusion. It was a tapestry of lives, each thread interwoven with the next, forming a picture that was both beautiful and heartbreaking. "These are my children," Jesus said, his voice filled with love and sorrow. "Many are lost, wandering without direction, searching for answers in places that cannot satisfy. They do not know me, or they have forgotten, but I have not forgotten them." He gestured toward a particular scene, a small town nestled in a valley, its streets lined with homes and churches. At first glance, it seemed peaceful, but as I looked closer, I saw the cracks beneath the surface. Families divided by conflict, individuals weighed down by loneliness, communities fractured by distrust. Yet even here, flickers of light remained, small but resilient, shining in defiance of the darkness. "This is where the battle is fought," Jesus continued. "Not in the grand arenas of the world, but in the quiet corners of everyday life. It is in the choices people make, the decision to forgive, to love, to serve, that the tide begins to turn. But they cannot fight alone. They need to know they are not forgotten, that their choices matter, and that I am with them." His words carried a weight that was impossible to ignore. I felt the enormity of the task before me, yet I also felt an unshakable sense of hope. The darkness I had seen was real, but it was not absolute. The light was stronger, and it only needed willing hearts to carry it forward. "Michael," Jesus said, turning his full attention to me, "this is your mission. You are to be a messenger, a voice that calls my people back to me. Tell them what you have seen, but more importantly, show them through your life. Let them see my love in your actions, my truth in your words, and my light in your presence." The scene around us shifted again, and I saw visions of what could be. Communities transformed by faith, families restored through forgiveness, lives renewed by the power of God's love. These were not mere possibilities. They were promises, waiting to be fulfilled if people would only choose to turn back to Him. But I also saw the cost. The path ahead would not be easy. There would be resistance, doubt, and even ridicule. Yet in the face of these challenges, the rewards were immeasurable. Each life touched, each heart changed, was a victory that echoed through eternity. As the visions faded, Jesus looked at me with a depth of compassion that I could scarcely comprehend. "You will not be alone," he said. "I will be with you, guiding you, strengthening you, and speaking through you. Trust in me, and do not be afraid. The harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Go now, and make my truth known." The finality of his words left no room for hesitation. I felt the weight of his command, but also the reassurance of his presence. This was not a task I could accomplish on my own, but with him, all things were possible. The journey was far from over. In fact, it had only just begun. The brilliance of the vision began to fade, replaced by an overwhelming sense of stillness. Yet, within that stillness, the words of Jesus continued to echo in my soul, filling me with both resolve and a profound sense of humility. The task he had set before me was not one of grandeur or personal glory. It was a mission rooted in love, service, and a responsibility far greater than myself. I found myself once again standing in the midst of the swirling tapestry of humanity. This time, however, the scenes felt more personal, as if the lives unfolding before me were reaching out, pleading for understanding, connection, and hope. Each thread, no matter how dim or frayed, held a story, a purpose, a divine spark waiting to be reignited. Jesus' voice broke through the stillness, gentle yet filled with authority. Michael, you have seen what lies beyond the veil, but the journey is not complete. The battle is not fought here in this realm, but through the lives of those I have called. Their faith, their love, their willingness to surrender. It is through these that my light will shine in the darkest places. His words brought to mind the countless faces I had seen. Men, women, and children, each burdened by struggles and fears, yet each carrying the potential for something greater. I could see how every small act of faith, every moment of prayer, every choice to love rather than hate was like a spark that, when combined with others, could ignite a flame capable of transforming the world. But I also saw the obstacles, the distractions, the lies, the doubts that clouded so many hearts. The enemy's tactics were subtle yet devastating, convincing people that their actions didn't matter, that they were alone, that hope was out of reach. These deceptions fed the darkness, allowing it to grow unchecked. Jesus turned to me, his gaze piercing yet filled with compassion. This is why you must go. The time is short, and the need is great. Speak the truth, not with fear, but with love. Remind them of who they are, children of light, called to a purpose far greater than themselves. Let them know that I am with them, even in their darkest moments. The weight of his words settled deeply within me. This was not just a mission. It was a calling, one that demanded everything I had to give. Yet, even in the face of such responsibility, I felt an unshakable peace. The path ahead would be fraught with challenges, but I knew I would not walk it alone. As the vision began to shift once more, I felt a pull, gentle but insistent, drawing me back toward the world I had left behind. The light around me dimmed, the scenes of eternity fading into the edges of my consciousness. Yet, the message remained, etched into my soul with a clarity that could not be denied. I was being sent back, not as the man I had been, but as someone transformed, carrying a message that would challenge, inspire, and call others to action. If you've been touched by this message, we invite you to join our community by subscribing to the channel and liking this video. We don't earn anything from this work. It's a labor of love, driven by a desire to share hope and faith with the world. Your support means everything to us, and it helps this message reach more people. Together, we can be a light in the darkness. As the light faded completely, I became aware of my body again. The transition was neither abrupt nor jarring, but carried a sense of completion, as though I had been gently placed back into the physical world. My chest heaved as I drew in a deep breath, the cold air rushing into my lungs like the first taste of life itself. The sounds of the paramedics around me, the beeping of monitors, and the distant hum of voices brought me back to reality. Yet everything felt different. The world I had returned to was the same in appearance, but my perception of it had been forever changed. I sat up slowly, the weight of the vision still pressing on my heart. The urgency of Jesus' words echoed within me, reminding me that the time for hesitation was over. I had been given a mission, not to keep these revelations to myself, but to share them with everyone who would listen. In the days that followed, I wrestled with how to begin. How could I, an ordinary man, convey something so extraordinary? How could words capture the magnitude of what I had seen and heard? But each time doubt crept in, I remembered the compassion in Jesus' eyes and the love in his voice. "You are not alone," he had said. "I will guide you." And so I began. I spoke to friends, family, and anyone willing to listen, sharing the message of hope, faith, and redemption. Each conversation felt like planting a seed, small but filled with the potential to grow into something life-changing. The vision of light and darkness never left my mind. I could see it in the world around me, in the kindness of a stranger, in the struggles of a family, in the quiet moments of prayer. Each act of faith, no matter how small, was a beacon pushing back the shadows. And each choice to turn away from God was a reminder of the stakes we faced. But even in the face of this stark reality, I was filled with hope. The love of Jesus was not a distant promise. It was a present reality available to anyone willing to embrace it. His call was not for perfection, but for surrender, for hearts willing to turn back to Him and trust in His grace. As I continued to share this message, I realized that the most powerful way to spread light was through love, love that reflected the heart of Christ, love that sought to heal, restore, and uplift. It wasn't about grand gestures or dramatic displays. It was about living each day with intention, choosing faith over fear, and extending grace to others. The mission Jesus had given me was not mine alone. It was a call to all who would listen, a reminder that we are all part of the same tapestry, woven together by His love. Together, we could create a world where light overcame darkness, where faith triumphed over despair, and where hope burned brightly for generations to come. As I finish sharing this story, I invite you to take this journey further. There's another video waiting for you, one filled with revelations that could change your life. Simply click the video appearing on your screen now and continue this path of faith and discovery. If this message touched your heart, please give this video a like and comment "Amen" below so that blessings continue to flow into your life. Your support means the world to us, and together, we can spread this light even further.